These are three nightmarishly true drunken horror stories.
I was going on my fraternity's brother retreat to a local nature preserve near my town when something happened. Something so horrifying that I will never be able to forget. This was a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still having a hard time being able to go to sleep. Maybe writing this will help. I should tell you, I'm not a very big guy, and I'm a very non-confrontational person. So me and my friend, we'll call him Tom, were driving up to the complex of cabins where we would spend a weekend of binge drinking and smoking cigars. The sky was beginning to darken with a storm on its way. Once we turned off the highway, getting onto a dirt road, I hoped that we would be able to get up the mountain drive without any problems. But in hindsight, I wish that we wouldn't have. As we were driving up, there was a tall and skinny man walking up the side of the road. By this time, it had already begun to storm. Tom, who was driving, is a super nice and helpful guy. He slowed down and rolled the window, yelling out to the man and asking if he needed a lift. The man replied, "No thanks." Jack then insisted, telling the man it would be no problem at all. I had a bad feeling about this guy, because the whole time he was talking to Tom, he just stared at me with this dead look in his eyes. The man then said okay and hopped in the back. As we drove, Tom kept trying to talk to the man, but he would just give these one-word responses until he stopped answering altogether. The car then filled with silence. I looked in the rearview and saw the man just sitting and staring at me. I felt like I was about to throw up when I saw this. My mind began racing. Why is this guy staring at me? I was thinking. He then quietly said, "Here's fine." Tom, puzzled, asked, "Here?" "Yeah," the man said. Tom began to slow down, but before he could completely stop, the man opened up the door and got out, walking into the woods. Confused and weirded out, Tom and I tried to put the strange event that had just happened out of our minds and look forward to the weekend of drinking. We met up with the other group of guys that had already shown up and told them about the weird guy that we had picked up on the way here. All of us just shrugged our shoulders and began to drink. As more of my brothers began to show up, the night began to fuse together, until everything became a blur. Later that night, or maybe early the next morning, everyone started trying to drunkenly make their way to their respective cabins. There was about 4 of us in these little camp-like cabins. My group and I were so drunk, when we got in, we jumped on our beds and passed out. The next thing I remember is waking up to a loud creaking sound, coming from our rickety cabin door being opened. I was in the drowsy state of having just woken up, and still a little blurry from the amount of alcohol I had consumed earlier. I sat up and looked around, till my eyes locked on a shadow of a head, peeking through the cracked door. By this time, the storm had moved past, and all that I could see is the sliver of light from the moon shining through some ruffled curtains, illuminating the man's face. I was frozen, not believing what I saw, when the door started to creak open more. The man, tall and skinny, could fully be seen in the doorway now. I instantly put 2 and 2 together and yelled. All my friends jerked up and looked at me, but all I could do is point towards the door. Tom looked at the door and jumped up with our other friend John, running towards the man. But the man turned and ran, disappearing into the woods. Tom came back with a horrified look on his face, only saying it was the man from earlier. We had packed all of our bags at that very moment, calling the others in the cabins beside us, telling them what had happened, and that we were leaving. As we were leaving, heading towards our cars, we saw a big butcher knife sitting on the edge of the tree line. I do not think I will ever be visiting that preserve again. This next story is told in the perspective of a female. This is the most horrifying night of my life. I'm an 18-year-old freshman girl. I'm short in stature and a shy person. My friend Jordan, who was joining a sorority, was taking me my first college party. I was excited and a bit terrified because I hated being around strangers. As we were walking to this frat house that was just right off campus, we decided to not cut through the park between our dorms and the house because it was already starting to get dark. When we arrived at the party, we both started drinking and got fairly drunk. Not blackout drunk, but drunk enough to be dazed and feeling good. I had just broken up with my serious boyfriend from high school, and I wasn't ready for another relationship. And I'm not really the hookup type. I was just there to meet people and have a good time. I was having a great time and enjoying the party until these two guys came up to me in Jordan and got way too close. Their breath smelled like they had just chugged a bottle of whiskey and they were staggering all over. Jordan and I stepped back a little when they got up right in our face, but they just inched forward again. Luckily, this girl I had just met, named Sam, saw we looked uncomfortable and came up to us and said, "Hey girls, come here, let's get another drink." After Jordan and I got away from those two creepy dudes, we decided it was time to head home. We said goodbye to the people we had met and headed toward the dorm. Jordan, in her drunken state, said that she was feeling adventurous and wanted to take the shortcut through the park. I stupidly agreed, and we headed into the pitch-black park with not a worry in the world. As we drunkenly walked through the park, I heard the breaking of branches coming from the woods on our side. I tapped Jordan and said, "I think there's something in the woods." Jordan said, "You're just paranoid." I brushed it off as it just being an animal or because I'm not in the best of states. As we turned the corner, I turned around when I heard the sound of footsteps right to the side of me. I whipped my head back to the side at the sound of Jordan screaming. Then I saw him, illuminated by the light from my phone flashlight, the creepy guy from the party standing in front of us. Then all of a sudden, the other one steps out from the tree line right next to us, both staring at us, wide eyes and smiling. They both started to walk towards us, frozen and terrified we didn't know what to do, when the faint sound of laughter came from the distance. The two guys stopped and looked at each other, when the light of a flashlight came around the corner, and a group of guys smoking came around and yelled towards us. The two guys made a beeline for the trees and disappeared. The group sprinted up to us and asked if we were okay, as a couple of them ran after the guys. They came back not knowing where they went. We filed a police report, but nothing has come of it yet. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if that group had not shown up. I will be forever grateful. All I have to say is don't walk through the park at night. You never know what crazy is right around the corner. This story is told from the viewpoint of a female. I was camping with a couple of people that I had met during my first year of college. I was there with my boyfriend Paul, our friend Jacob, and Isabel, who were dating as well. We were driving down to a campsite that Paul and Jacob had visited before. We planned on spending the weekend there and just enjoying ourselves and relaxing. Once we got to where we were going, Jacob, Isabel, and I were pitching up the tent as Paul went off and collected firewood for the night. Paul returned minutes later, saying that there was another group of about 8 people camped 5 minutes away. He said that we should go talk to them, but I insisted that we should just stay here. Paul and Jacob said that they would go talk to them and then come back. When they left, Isabel reached in her bag and pulled out a bottle of vodka and said, "How about we start early?" I accepted and we began to drink. It was probably 20 or 30 minutes later when Paul and Jacob returned from visiting our neighbors. They said that the group seemed pretty cool, but there was a couple of them that were giving off weird vibes. Paul then asked for the bottle of vodka and the party began. We had the fire going shortly and began roasting marshmallows, drinking, and smoking weed. It was probably an hour or two later when we saw a light from a massive fire coming from our neighbor's campsite. I was a little concerned and confused, but Paul reassured me that they were building a bonfire and told him we would probably see its glow. We continued to drink and smoke as the night turned to morning. This is when things began to get strange. One of our neighbors came up and asked us to come join them. We told them that we were about to go to bed and thanked them for the offer. The man grew an angry look on his face. He didn't say anything and then just walked away. We all looked at each other very confused as to what had just happened. The night continued on until we were all ready to go to bed. Paul stood up to walk to our tent and an arrow flew right next to his head, sticking to the tree behind us. We all just stopped and stared at the tree that had just been hit, when another arrow flew through our campsite, striking our tent. This is when we realized what was going on. Someone was trying to kill us. Seconds later, 5 men wearing black robes began walking towards Isabel. One pulled out a knife that looked like some ceremonial knife. Paul grabbed Isabel, who was frozen, and pulled her towards our group. Another arrow flew in, and then we ran. With no light, we were running in the direction of what we thought was our car. We didn't hear anything behind us, and eventually somehow made it to the car. We drove out of there, leaving all of our stuff. I do not know what kind of group that was, or cult, but this was the most horrifying thing that has ever happened to me. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Fright. I just want to thank you for checking out our video and like and subscribe for weekly updates. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.